Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good evening, wherever you are on our most amazing planet. I'm Ariel.
I'm Shia.
Welcome to being here.
Yes, we are being here, that is.
You know, today's show is a really fun topic. My Siri said, "What did you say?" I think it said it. That's because we don't curse on air.
That's right.
So it's F responsibility.
F responsibility. That's what I say.
Now, some of you may have tuned into the show because you think we're getting ready to tell you to show up late to work or blow off your child support payments. Or I'm sorry to tell you that is not the case. We'll explain what we mean shortly. But first, let's talk about
Listening. Something most of us don't do most of the time. Most of the time, we're lost in thought.
Or filling in the blanks, or thinking we already know, heading forward into...
We've had this conversation called listening before, so I don't really have to listen to it.
That's right.
That's right.
F responsibility.
There you go.
Well, the thing is, if you fully engage in whatever it is you're up to, life becomes so much more fun. Today is the pathway, should you choose, to fun as opposed to having an effed life.
Yes. When you truly F responsibility, you have an effed life. When you realize you cannot be different than you are in the current moment of your life, well, then you can really be responsible for your life, as in that's how it's showing up in this moment. Not shame, blame, or guilt, but you're there. This is what's happening. You're responsible.
Now, in case we haven't told you yet today, which I don't believe we have,
we finish each other's sentences.
Yes. See, we finish each other's sentences, and we're not going anywhere. Hence the name of the show.
Being here.
It's really about being here.
It really is. I had a friend once who used to say, love of chocolate solved all problems. I still love chocolate, but I'm convinced that being here solves all problems. That when you access and live in the current moment of your life, you cease to create problems. That doesn't mean circumstances don't show up that don't meet your preferences, but they're not problems. You don't have to work on them to fix them or change them. You just have to be willing to be with them, and they'll shift and change themselves.
Okay, so let's give you what we meant when we put together this show and the title for the show. And Shia,
what did we mean?
Shia gave a really good example to himself and to me this morning about effing responsibility. And here's what we are talking about.
We discovered.
Yes. You have in your mind a dictator that holds you responsible for making mistakes and doing it wrong and makes you want to be a better you. But what if you're doing your life perfectly and you can only be exactly as you are in any given moment, which is the second principle. So the moment you, quote, make a mistake, that dictator, that responsibility machine steps in and berates you for what you did wrong. When you cannot go back and fix it, it's already happened. Case in point.
I got into the shower. See? And then I realized, as the water ran through my hair, that I had my hearing aids in.
Hearing aids are not supposed to
They're
get
not
wet.
water friendly.
So immediately that conversation, that internal, it wasn't simply open the door, take them out, Ariel, can you give me a hand?
Well, I beg to differ.
I heard the exclamation that preceded that, which is why I came down the stairs to get your hearing aids before you asked for me.
Oh.
Because the exclamation...
Was it an expletive?
It had the, oh, you idiot. Yeah, it did. It had a little Slight
Self-judgment.
self-judgment.
Right.
Now, the self-judgment machine is automatic. Shai very quickly moved past that, but many people don't. We've been talking to people recently who've been berating themselves for taking a nap during the day, for watching television sometimes, for what they eat, how they move, what they do. That the berating
If they got enough
machine.
steps in today.
Did I get enough sleep last night? So it really is about discovering how to be where you are as opposed to talk to yourself about what you should have done. I think that's a good place to call in our first guest, shall we?
Okay.
All right, we have Steve.
First guest.
There you are.
Hi, Steve. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening.
Good morning. This is Steve in Manhattan.
Hi.
And I just love what you were just talking about. I felt like you described me to a T, as they say, the judgments and okay. I've gotten much better at this since attending your seminars, but I still occasionally find myself judging. I should have done this. I should have done that.
Well, I'm happy to hear that you're normal.
Normal,
yeah,
right?
really.
So you're a normal human being, so good.
I can't really see your shirt, but otherwise you'd be wearing like a Superman shirt, By the way, I know this podcast is audio format. We are doing this via Zoom so we can see Steve. And he's looking very handsome this morning.
He can see us too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a tendency, I think I conflate the word responsibility with morality in some way. So, it's not, it could all be things like Shia was just talking about, like, it's not a moral issue that I forgot to do, to, let's say, put my watch on in the morning or silly things like that. But it's also these grander, I don't want to get into them, but I think a lot about bigger moral, political issues and, what can I do to make the world better? So there's this intimate level.
I'll tell you what you can do to make the world better. Do what you're doing when you're doing it rather than thinking about making the world better.
Yeah.
That'll make the world better. That'll make your universe better. That'll make your life better, in that when you're busy thinking about all those things that should be, that are not, you don't shave very well. You miss hair on your face in different places. You leave things incomplete because you're busy thinking about how to change what's not changeable in current time, which is the moment. So in your honorable quest to make the world a better place, you're undermining the possibility of magic everywhere in your life.
The other thing is you have such a strong and beautiful intellect, that ability, Steve. But the place where you make the world better and impact the world is not through your intellect. It includes your intellect, but it really is about your being. And that's part of why you love coming to the global video seminars that we do, to the weekends, because as we're all being together, our presence impacts how people feel about themselves, how people interact with their universes. So in a certain respect, you could think of yourself like a rose. A rose doesn't have strategies for making the world better, but if you come within the proximity of a rose, its beauty, the smell, it has an impact. The way you're being, if you're being kind to yourself, that has a greater impact, because anybody who comes within your orbit or who thinks about you or receives an email from you, those emails used to come, early viruses came with in the attachment. The I love you email was a real popular one at first. It came with an attachment. People would click the attachment. It would download a virus into their computer, crash their computer. But what if your attachment on every communication you send is your own personal well-being? So I click that attachment, metaphorically speaking, and what I get is well-being in my computer.
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's, I don't know more to say, except that's a lovely sentiment and motivator. I find that I get the most well-being when I can't define, when I don't have a reason for why I feel good.
That's right.
In the seminars and elsewhere.
Yeah, that's right. When you leave your intellect out of it and just experience being alive, that's when life is so vivid. But when you pass it through the computer of your mind, it makes everything two-dimensional and gray as opposed to living color and three-dimensional.
I suspect from what you just said, Steve, you're having well-being more frequently. And I'll tell you why. Because you're not trying to figure out why you have well-being, chances are the flip side of that coin is true. Also, if you're feeling distressed, you're not pointing to someone made you distressed, a situation made you distressed. So you just allow yourself to experience it. 3 principles of instantaneous transformation, using distress or stress as a theme. If you're stressed and you resist it,
you're stuck in it.
You're compounded. And given a person who did care deeply about the election, chances are when things swung away from your candidate, it was stressing. You resist it. What you resist persists, grows stronger, dominates your experience of yourself, of your life, of other people. Second principle, in any given snapshot of time, you can only be exactly as you are.
Yeah.
Third principle, anything you see,
without
honestly
judging.
see without judging completes itself. So I found my thought process is bouncing back and forth through this election process. And when Shai and I were laying in bed the first night as things were really
clearly not going the way we would have preferred.
And they were really clearly up in the air. And the lights were out. And Shai quoted a Sin Ming quote that is from a Zen patriarch. And this particular passage was written in the back of our first book, Working on Yourself Doesn't Work. He laid there and said, you know, Ariel, the great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. Make the slightest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set
infinitely apart.
And so, in a certain respect, well-being is totally up to us. Things happen that we don't like.
You mean it's our responsibility?
It is our responsibility. But our responsibility does not include shame, blame, guilt, being hard on ourselves. That's something extra added by that really, really smart mind of ours.
Well, it's added by the culture you grew up in.
Yeah.
See, that was passed on to us as a way, there was a saying, spare the rod and spoil the child, where we needed to beat sense into people rather than realize that people, if left to their own devices, would be brilliant as they are without beating on themselves to motivate themselves. But curiosity can motivate you just as well as harsh words.
Yeah. Whenever you say responsibility is, at least in part, your cultural download, I can tell people like, no, it really is true. But I'm always reminded of when we went to Bali, Indonesia, which was a very distinctly different culture. In fact, we still have lots of remnants around and artwork from Bali and influence from there. But one of the people we really cared about there thought he had been irresponsible because he had not had his eye teeth filed down in a tooth filing ceremony, which is a coming of age ceremony that generally happens around 13. He was 29 years old, and he knew that was why
his life was not going well,
because he'd been irresponsible about that. And he had this ceremony while we were there, and it was pretty intense because they take a big file and, whack around on your teeth. But that was definitely being hard on himself from something he had learned. And it had never even crossed Shy in my mind that we needed to do filing on our teeth.
I never went out to find a big file when I was a kid.
Our success was not dependent on it.
No, we didn't have a shaman do some shameful acts on our teeth.
That's right.
Just the orthodontist.
I love your discussion of culture because definitely the one I grew up in was which I described, what you described about, it was very evaluative and moral and all these things.
But you see, that's normal. You personalize it to the culture you grew up in. But Ariel comes from a very...
That one was valuative and moral. Mine was a very different culture than yours, but it was valuative and moral.
Exactly.
It's just the morals are different depending on the culture. And that's the standard or the measuring stick we all measure ourselves against. And it happens automatically, reflexively, which is what happened for Shaya in the shower this morning. The reflex is not a problem. It's never a problem. You can't help it. It's a reflex. If I hit your
humerus,
it's with the little thing on the knee, also on the knee.
Reflex.
Reflex, your foot would bounce if it's operating properly. You have reflexes, but in the breath, the moment after that, what you do with it is totally up to you.
No, it's
whether you go down the automatic road that has been determined culturally,
or the slack jaw road, where you go, I was just hard on myself.
Yeah.
Now what?
Well, what I said was I got ahead of myself.
Yeah. I see that with myself sometimes too. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can say, I got ahead of myself as a fact.
Yeah.
Or you can say, I got ahead of myself as a judgment.
Yeah.
Choice is up to you.
I mean, there's certain automaticity. So I'm often trying to get things done on I'm not talking about work now, just in general. I have this mechanism that, I try to get everything done quickly. And sometimes I'm not there with what I'm doing. So like I broke a little strap on my previous watch because I was just quickly getting dressed and doing these things. And then instead of judging myself, I go, I did that. I was ahead of myself. I find, thanks to my coming to your seminars and listening to your radio and show, the podcast, I'm much more able to catch that and not judge myself for it, which would always have been, in the past, would have been my tendency. And
that's a good place to end then.
That's right.
Refreshing. Thank you.
It is refreshing. Thanks for being with us today.
Yes, thank you. Thanks.
Really our pleasure.
Hey, it's time for the listener feedback spotlight.
It's where we get to hear from people in this amazing listenership and transformation community talking about what's happening in their lives.
This is Andrea from Basel in Switzerland. I love listening to the Being Here podcast. One thing that is truly, truly amazing for me is that through listening to this podcast, I can see my work day, my students, I work as a singing teacher, newly each day and each time I see them. And that is just a joy, and life never gets boring that way.
If you would like to experience an expanded sense of well-being, join us. Connect with people all over the world from the comfort of your own home at Aaron and Shire's lively interactive global video seminars. Participate in any of their 2-hour online events or take a deep dive into the magic of being you at a virtual weekend seminar. Come on, let's connect. Find out more and register at transformationmadeeasy.com.
We have some really amazing
Excellent.
courses coming up.
Excellent courses. One is called
Discover the Healer in You. We're doing it right before the holidays. And I think this year is a particularly good year for this course in that many of us cannot physically be with our loved ones and our friends.
Yeah, this pandemic has put a crimp on most people's lives. And you get stuck with that internal conversation because prior to the pandemic, you could go out and interact with other people. You could distract yourself from that internal conversation that berates you all the time for being the way you are, as opposed to being the way you, quote, should be. And that's just your mind. But if you don't have an access way into the moment where you leave that voice behind, that judgmental nature behind, and discover that existing simultaneous in you is a healer, a presence that makes life easier for everybody, including yourself.
You know, I was thinking about it. Shay and I got haircuts. We went into New York City. We lined up a whole bunch of things we needed to do. We normally would go in there every week or twice a week.
You know what was so amazing
It's
about
been
that?
9 weeks.
Yeah, but what was so amazing was how few people there were.
And then we went into Starbucks, one of our regular haunts. And I actually had written an article some time ago called The Perfect Cup of Coffee, about sitting in the window next to somebody eating, watching people come and go, and a woman who came in who clearly had no money but really wanted a cup of coffee. And I'd purchased her a cup of coffee, and it was like the best cup of coffee I never had. And it was amazing that there was no place to sit. You couldn't even stand near. Interacting with anybody was discouraged. So
it goes against all our social norms, you see. This pandemic pushes us into hermitage, if you will, where you become a recluse. You become less socially participatory.
And isolated.
Right. And that's could be seen as the definition of an upset.
However, this course, Discover the Healer in You, I'm laughing a little bit. Our cat is clearly seeing a bird out there in her tail. Her whole body is quivering because she can't get to it, kind of like us with the people around us. It's like, oh, look, a person. Discover the Healer in You is November 21st and 22nd. And if you want to know more, just go to our website, transformationmadeeasy.com. And one other course we have coming up in December. It's on Wednesday evenings, the first 3 Wednesdays, the 2nd, the 9th, and the 16th. Famous, wonderful vocal coach Susan Finch and I are teaming up to lead a course called Speak Up. Speak Up is fun. It's about allowing you to dissolve that thing between you and self-expression. We do a lot of fun things together, and I'm sure Shia will be there as a special guest, and you are invited. Again, transformationmadeeasy.com. Shall we take our next guest? Let's do it. We have Micah. Hi, Micah.
Hi, this is Micah from Hamburg. Hello.
Hi. Nice to see you.
Yeah, welcome to our new reinvented podcast.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be here. My first podcast.
Awesome. It's so lovely to see you. I'm sure for the people who are listening. So lovely to hear you. It's so wild not to actually be in touch with people for great periods of time.
Right.
And it's just
I've been
lovely
thinking
to have
about
you
you
here.
lately, though. You have definitely been in my thoughts.
Oh,
And it was all good. Just wondering how you're doing.
well, I'm doing sometimes not too good, and sometimes I feel satisfaction. I feel that I'm gifted, that I'm not in deep struggle because of the pandemic. I'm aware of how gifted I am. But then I also noticed that my energy level is going very much in waves, and not my energy level, my mood.
Mhm.
My energy,
Well, you know something, Micah. It may all be perfectly appropriate what's going on.
You mean the moods?
The moods. I mean the moods. I mean the ups and downs that you go through in your thoughts. And why I say that is your routine, your life has been turned upside down. You used to go to work every day. You used to have different things that you did. Go out to coffee with friends. There were things that you did that you can no longer do due to the COVID pandemic. And so it may be appropriate to rest rather than work sometimes. It may be appropriate to have lower energy because what's happening isn't pulling on you.
You're not being driven forward by the circumstances. Now, mood dips follow a thought process that you invest in. So if you're feeling low energy, and then you have the idea that, oh man, never used to be this way. I need to get going. Now, mind you, you don't have anything to get going to, but you have the idea that you should. A better you would do more or different or better.
yes.
You invest in that thought, and that thought takes your mood down that roller coaster dip until it lets go of you or you let go of it, and then you climb back up to the top of the hill until you judge yourself again. And unlike Shia, who had that reflexive judgment, he recognized, or he didn't even have to think about it, that thought process was not him.
Well, what happened was when I realized I still had my hearing aids in and they were underwater, the first thing I did was just step out of the shower, grab a towel and wipe them off, and hand them to Ariel and ask her to use a hair dryer to dry them even more.
So by the time I got down our circular stairs, which are right behind us, to the bathroom, which is directly below me, after having heard his exclamation and knowing that he had gotten into the shower with his hearing aids and that he could probably use my support, he had already either rehung up the towel or had stepped away from the towel. I had no idea he had dried them off on the towel because his actions were immediate. Most of us don't just take immediate action. We have a whole conversation with
I
ourselves
shouldn't have.
first about how we were wrong in the first
What's
place.
wrong with me that I would step into the shower with my hearing aids in? You know, maybe this means I'm getting old and demented. Maybe I've got Alzheimer's. Maybe.
You know, when you say demented, it reminds me of Harry Potter.
The Dementors?
Yeah, it really didn't
That's a
occur to me
great
at the
word.
time that in the Harry Potter books, there was these bad ghost-like apparitions, energies that would come, latch themselves to your head and suck all the happiness out of your body until you became a husk. And they were called Dementors. And it's like being demented. It's like your thought processes against yourself suck all the happiness out of you. And of course that's in, she is so clever, J.K. Rowling. And I think if you just recognize it's the thought process that
See,
you listen to as if it's true that
as if
sends
it's
your moods
you,
down.
as if those thoughts are you. That's where you get in trouble. They're thoughts.
And see, now I'm looking at your face while we're talking to you and you're thinking about it. And somewhere in there's even a mini judgment that you shouldn't be listening to those thought processes, rather than a fascinating phenomena that we all listen to our thought processes.
You know, these days, people walking down the street talking to themselves is normal because they're wearing earbuds and they're talking on their phones. But in fact, in reality, people are talking to themselves all the time about everything. So that you talk to yourself, that you berate yourself, that you think you should be doing it differently, this is really normal stuff. This is not problematic.
And you're right. I was thinking, is this already it? Because what you said already gave me new information that I appreciated, but I had in my mind, I had a question, but I felt complete at this moment when you were speaking. But also I thought, should I ask my question anymore?
What is your
Of course,
question?
have a question. Questions are okay. Give us a question.
You can be complete and have a question.
Yeah, I'm complete and I have a question.
All right.
Because I feel that speaking of responsibility, I often notice in these times, and maybe in general, that I take action, like I feel responsible for other people than myself. Like I sometimes mix being responsible with taking care. And that gives me a lot of satisfaction, I have to admit. Like I don't know, I just like it. I have suggestions, ideas, or I really actually help. But the other day I was with a friend who is really much like me, I had the impression, and I felt that it was making me weak. The more action she took and the more ideas she had for myself, I was feeling very weak. Like not.
Wait a second. I got to get some clarity here. She had ideas for you about how you should be?
Like actions you should be taking or things you should be doing?
Or just little things, like we attended a seminar, like a live seminar together, and everything she had already prepared and ready, and the hotel key and everything, before I could take any action or make any suggestion about like where to go for breakfast or anything. She was already prepared and had ideas. And I noticed normally that would be me. Like I have everything prepared for other people. I have ideas. I have ideas for breakfast, and I have the hotel key ready and things like that. And I always think that's helpful for other people and they enjoy that. But I noticed that when she did that, I didn't appreciate it. I felt weak, and I was wondering if my idea of being responsible and taking care is making other people weak as well.
Well, you know, I really like what you're talking about, because there's this distinction between assisting somebody and helping them. When you help them, it's as if they're not capable. When you assist them, they can handle it on their own. You're just making it easier.
You know, let's take breakfast as an example.
Yes.
So you're going to a live seminar. You guys are now in your hotel room and you've done your research. It's one thing to do your research and say, I know where we're going to breakfast. I got it handled. And it's another thing. I did some research. This place sounds really good. What do you think? You want to go there? You can take your helpful nature to dominate others, or you can, as Shai said, assist, be there, do things to take care. It sounds, at least a little bit from your experience, that your friend, who is similar to you and helpful, also wanted to be in control. Like, to leave things up to chance might have a discomforting feeling, like I gotta arrange things so that I'm comfortable. And then if she arranges things so she's comfortable, but does it in the guise of taking care of you, when really it's about taking care of her, you may end up feeling dominated. I don't think she made you feel weak. I don't think you make anybody feeling weak. But I have a feeling that if you don't have a role, you have your insecurities that are hidden by action come to the foreground. And this is what Shai was talking about earlier, about how this could have been or can be a really good time for you. When we've had so much structure is very therapeutic. Going to work every day, have certain social interactions that we have the expectation of. We have rules in place and time to get up and where to go and when to go. It pulls us past our internal insecurities. When things happen that are different, then what rises up is anything that we're unsure about. So her taking care of you so you had no role left you with you.
But her taking care of you was her trying to control her universe. When she feels insecure, what she wants to do is be in control.
And my feeling is I often want to do the same.
Of course
Yes,
you do.
and there are people in your life who have, over time,
but you don't
resented
have to make it...
your ability to be together when they feel like they're not together. And so now, in a certain respect, even if you slow down 5%, Micah, chances are people won't have that reaction. It's as if you take a look at how she interacted with you, chances are she had it together, but she was moving at a pace. She wasn't including you.
She planned her life regardless of what showed up, rather than looking and seeing what was appropriate in the moment.
And it could have been a simple, hey, I'm heading over to the hotel earlier. I'll get our keys. I'll meet you in the lobby. Like to let you know, rather than you walk in and here's your key. Which on the surface and maybe in general is often a nice thing. But if a person is either competing to be the better organizer or is insecure themselves and they're doing it as an action to cover their insecurity themselves, then what leaks out the side is insecurity.
Well, what's very interesting about this whole conversation is that you've been doing most of the talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been just enjoying listening to you rather than to have to prove that I have something of value.
I think the reason I've been doing so much of the talking in this case is I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over because I'm not sure she hears it. It doesn't really go in. I think she still is determined to
work on herself.
Yes, work on herself. Like this whole idea.
See, look, sweetheart, you are perfect and you've done absolutely nothing wrong. Period.
Yeah.
I have a question too. What's wrong with being weak?
Oh.
Well, she's German.
Oh.
It's in the culture.
I was more concerned. I took my friend as an example because through her actions, I thought I saw myself. And now while you're talking, I see all the pictures of how I helped people instead of only assisting them, of how I helped people. And while you were talking, I had the feeling it all got in, but I was thinking at the same time, while you were talking, I was remembering situations when I had the feeling I overwhelmed people with my desire to help. So
3 principles. What you resist or judge, you get stuck with. So clearly you're stuck with, you've judged that you've apparently helped people and overwhelmed them.
No. I got something just now.
I'm moving this toward you.
Okay, move it toward me. What I just got was that you were genuinely self-expressive about, say, transformation, and people said you were dominating them with that, or and so now you doubt your self-expression because you're basically a nice person. You want to be a nice person, and you don't want people to be offended. So you think you offended them by inviting them to a seminar, rather than they're an offense looking to happen, and you just gave them a nice reason.
Wow.
Which tells me that when you went with your friend, you could have been pre-upset. Then anything she did for you was a sign of weakness for you, as opposed to, look at this, I'm pre-upset. I'm upset. She just did something nice, and I'm taking exception.
The other thing is this: the whole world is upset right now. COVID is rebounding everywhere. So being upset is not a bad thing. It's just being upset.
And I can really feel it. I don't know when people will be listening to this. They may be listening to this years down the line, but I've been very aware in the last few days of the Europeans who are my friends, who have been really rather expansive because they got to move around. The kids went back to school.
COVID went away there for a while,
and now that it's coming back, and things are closing down. A friend of ours called it COVID light. There's some closures. The closures themselves are hitting people very hard right now. There's a level of upset that almost wasn't there at the beginning of the pandemic. It's like, oh my God, here we go again.
Yeah.
And then you can personalize that and think you're upset over your friend getting a door key in advance.
It sounds silly. Well, yeah, it's I guess I was upset.
Of course. Otherwise, you don't get upset.
And I love this. I'm so glad you're calling in on F responsibility, because what you're doing is analyzing yourself from a hyper responsible thing. Oh, I do that to people sometimes. F that. Don't go backwards. Just keep being here. Some people will be upset with you. Some people won't. But analyzing what you're doing wrong never helps.
And what if you're not doing anything wrong?
Well, that's why.
Because, see, you can't be different than you are in the current moment of your life. That's the second principle. So if you can't be different than you are, how can you be doing you wrong?
Yeah, that's...
You have the thought you could be doing it differently, but that doesn't mean that you could be doing it differently, because you're only doing what you're doing. And I know this seems too simple, but it is.
I feel that I have, in general, a lot of energy in me and a lot to give. Like I have a lot the feeling I take care of myself very well. And one part of it is, a big part is taking part in the seminars, because that really gives me a general well-being that I very much love other people to have as well.
Yes, absolutely.
But when you want for them more than they want for themselves, it becomes help.
There's another thing here. If you see, here's the thing. People are doing their lives exactly perfectly. And then you come along and tell them.
Back up a little bit so I can see you.
And tell them about, say, transformation. They don't want to hear that. They just about have control over their life the way it is, with all the upsets in it. You're adding a possibility of them not being upset is just something they do not want to hear. People are attached to their problems and their upsets. And if you try to take them away, they will bite your hand.
Yeah.
I remember way back when Shai and I were, I don't think we were not married yet. We were dating. I'm pretty sure we were dating. And we went to see a movie about a woman who was having an orgasm for an hour. And it was a very graphic movie. It was shown by a university, but I found it extremely upsetting, mainly because for me, having an orgasm was effortful. It wasn't something just relaxing, and it certainly wasn't something that happened for an hour. And I got so upset. It wasn't like, look, here's this other possibility. Maybe we could expand into exploring what's possible. I took it as a judgment of my orgasmic or lack of orgasmic nature. And I was so upset that we were in New York City. We were on the Upper East Side. I wouldn't even walk on the sidewalk with Shia. I walked down the middle of the street. Now, mind you, this is pre-transformation. It was late at night, so there were no cars coming, but I was like, you think there's something wrong with my sexual? It accessed such an upset where I was so judgmental of myself, and I wanted to assign that judgment to Shia. And I have a feeling from time to time, when you have a possibility for people and you open that Pandora's box of what people think of themselves, they have a feeling that you're judging them
the way they judge them.
And it was really notable to me because I was so upset back then. And it's, of course, I've never had personally an hour-long orgasm. It's not something that I was super interested in aiming toward, but I did recognize that my upset had to do with me and my being unkind to myself. And I really wanted it to be Shia's fault.
Yeah. And the taking responsibility, I discovered that is also, if I take responsibility for myself, no, that doesn't lead to anything. I was thinking.
I love that it doesn't lead to anything. Say again?
I tell you in the next session if I take another podcast, because this was already very rich for me, and I just didn't want it to lead to someplace else now. But
yeah, that's great, because it's enough. You're enough. And you know what else is excellent? You just gave us a lead in to next week's episode, which is called It's Perfect.
Oh, I try to call in again.
Well, thank you. It's perfect. Whether you do or not, it's
and
perfect.
You are perfect.
Yeah, really a treat being with you today.
Lovely being with you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Okay, we'll be back next week.
So come on back.
And don't miss
being here.